Hey guys, how's it going? So, it's been a while since I did anything on my channel that was not a stream, and even that I took a bit of a break from. But one thing I've wanted to do for a while, just because I thought it would be fun, was to do a tier list on characters in like Genshin and Arknights and Star Rail. And I figured a really basic way to start would be to tier list how strong I think each of the characters in Genshin is. This is obviously going to be pretty opinion heavy, but I think it'd be fun. I did consider adding the Harbingers that aren't playable, as well as some other characters like Skirk, but I decided against it just because at that point it's guesswork. We obviously know that the top three Harbingers are considered Archon level. You would assume even some of the lower ranked ones that aren't fighters like Pantalone would probably still be pretty high level in terms of combat ability. But I honestly have no idea, so I decided against it. But the categories I went with were, I started with the Traveler being at the top. I am one of the people that thinks that once they get all their powers back, they're probably going to be extremely strong. It's obviously guesswork, but as far as we know, they're potentially, as world hoppers, the strongest people in Teyvat at full strength. Minus maybe the being that looked like the Hersher of the Void from Honkai Impact 3rd that we saw at the very beginning of the game. That being said, I have wondered about that just because whichever Traveler sibling you don't choose, the Abyss sibling, tends to take a very hands-off approach in terms of what's going on in Teyvat. So who really knows? But I went with that tier, and then we have Archon level, which even that isn't necessarily straightforward because that is a very wide range in terms of pure combat ability. For example, a lot of Nahida's strengths aren't in combat. She even says kind of in that story quest, as I understood it, that she would probably lose to Dottore if they'd fought each other right then and there. But they're still probably head and shoulders above anyone else. I went with Elite Fighter, Adventurer, Average Level Fighter, and actually the reason I thought this tier list would be kind of funny, Normal Person with a Vision. Because one of the biggest jokes I've heard, and they usually use poor Yoimiya for this, is just that, like, yeah, we have an actual, like, captain of basically the entire military force of Liwa. Well, at least the naval force, right? And she's a 4-star, as is the de facto leader of that nation. But a girl who makes fireworks is 5-star. I really like Yoimiya, but that's kind of why I made this tier, because there are a number of people like her and Hu Tao that aren't exactly combatants in like any way. But for Albedo, there's a lot of mystery around Albedo. I would still put him in Elite Fighter. I think generally all of the high-ranking Knights of Favonius probably go into this tier. I'm not going to order these by how strong I actually think they are within the tier, but I do believe that Albedo could be even stronger than he's letting on. It's that Koi Dao buff. But let's see. Alhaitham, I feel like maybe I should have split this tier already, but Alhaitham's in Elite Fighter as well. He, funnily enough, as like the scribe for a while, you wouldn't think would be super strong, but I'm starting to learn that titles don't necessarily mean a lot the more I think about this, because Eula's a reconnaissance captain, and she does a lot of fighting for a reconnaissance captain. But like I was saying, Amber goes in this tier. We'll just put each of the Knights of Favonius in this tier as we get there. But Aloy, I don't know much about Aloy. I don't even know if I can really rank her. I'm going to put her an average level fighter. But given that she's from Monster Hunter, I believe, she's probably pretty strong. I just don't feel qualified enough to make any kind of statement on her. Ito, I have no idea on. Because most of the time, he spends just messing around in Inazuma. And then we go to the Chasm, and he basically punches a barrier down. I'm going to put him in Adventurer tier. That might be a bit weird, because he's not really an adventurer. But I just don't think that his strength is going to overcome how dumb he is. I feel bad saying that, but I don't know. I just feel like... you know what? I changed my mind. Sorry. This tier is going to be full of characters already, I can tell. Baiju, I'm going to put in Normal Person with a Vision. He does obviously have a lot of healing capability, And we did get some lore on him in one of the events in Liwa. Really interesting to see kind of the story between, I believe the snake's name is Chongsheng. I might be pronouncing that wrong, and I might have the wrong name. But I still just don't think that he's ever really involved in combat as far as I know. I'm going to put Barbara in that same tier. Because at the end of the day, there's so many characters like that that you would assume just having a vision means they can probably fight. But they're not in positions where they ever would. Beidou, I'm putting an elite fighter. I mean, for obvious reasons, she defeated a large sea beast before she even had a vision. I think they robbed her real hard by making her a 4-star. I heard that the reason her and Ningguang are 4-stars actually, and I don't know if this is true, is because they realized there would be too many 5-star characters early on. Bennett probably has to be an adventurer tier, because he's literally an adventurer. That'll probably prove true for Official and a few other characters. I don't know about Candace, or Kandake, however people are choosing to pronounce it, because she is kind of the protector of a village. She's, in my opinion, she seemed to be one of the stronger people within Sumeru's desert. But I don't feel like we saw her fight that much. Which is funny too, because I would think if Beidou's an elite fighter, I would think one of the closest fighters to that is Dea. And Dea's probably pretty similar in strength to Candace, I'd imagine. But I have no idea. So I'm probably going to put them both in adventurer tier, just because I feel like we haven't seen enough of their feats in combat. We obviously know they're both really strong, but, you know. Chevreuse, I'm actually going to put in elite fighter. She seems to be... I can't remember what her title is. She was in that last event, but everyone was freaking out when we first saw that there would be guns in Genshin Impact with... How am I forgetting her name? Oh, Chlorand. And I actually think that Chlorand would absolutely be in this tier as well, if not higher up in the tier if I was ordering it, you know, in order. But she's really strong. I absolutely think she's probably one of the stronger military presences in Fontaine, from what we've seen. That doesn't include, you know, our literal water dragon. Charlotte's a normal person with a vision. I mean, it's kind of the similar thing to... I might put Kirara in average level fighter because she's more of a... She's a messenger that travels across the nations, so she probably has to be able to protect herself. You would imagine that Charlotte would be in a similar boat since we've met her in other nations, but I still just feel like that's... Yeah, I'm not sure. Chongyun's probably an adventurer tier. He's an exorcist, but he's not as strong as Shenhe or a lot of the more experienced fighters. Kale I'm going to put in adventure tier as well, because once she was cured of the, I believe it's called Elazar, I think she, you know, at this point is just a full trainee forest ranger. She's probably going to move up in the ranks on that over time. Cyno's elite fighter. I mean, we talk about how I think these two were some of the stronger fighters in Sumeru. You could make an argument for Cyno being the strongest non-Archon, you know, vision holder in Sumeru. And I love the dad jokes. They're great. The Luke's an elite fighter. Diona is... I mean, probably this tier. Dory's a merchant. Eula's an elite fighter. This tier is going to be massive, but the more I think about it, the more I just feel kind of bad putting them down in adventurer tier, because they are both really strong, and I do think they're both about the same in terms of strength level. Faruzan's a weird one, because she's another one of those characters, similar to how you might not want to directly compare Nahida to the other Archons, because she has, as far as we know, a lot of knowledge, but I think I'd still only put her in adventure tier because we haven't really seen her fight. Official's adventure tier. Farina's also a weird one. I wasn't one of the people who really, like, hated her from the start, and I still wouldn't say she's my favorite Archon. That's probably still Zhongli. But it was interesting to see how across Fontaine, they did such a good job with storytelling that people's opinions flipped so rapidly. In terms of her actual ability to fight right now, though, there's an argument for even this one, but I'd put her an average level fighter just because. Eh. No, she's basically just a human with a vision because we hear about how like she flooded her apartment, right? And at this point, hmm, that's a weird one. Because obviously, if we were doing Focalor, she'd be an Archon level, but again, I feel like a lot of these characters are people that in lore probably are still much stronger than an average human just because of a vision, but we just don't know. Fremine, I think all three of the siblings are probably in adventure tier. They are Fatui operatives, and we do see like you don't think about it, but like the stealth agents, I can't remember what they're called because I'm terrible with names. But Eula fights one in her like character trailer, and she pretty handedly beats them. And it's so hard to tell, especially because they're members of the House of Hearth. They're under Arlecchino, who is the kind of like spy master, right? The information broker. I don't know what the correct word would be. So I can't imagine that they're unable to fight, but I also can't imagine that they're as directly in the line of fire as other Fatui members. All Adeptus are elite fighters. They're all extremely strong. Goro's a general of an army. Utao's a normal person with a vision. Knight of Favonius. I actually don't know, aside from being on a standard banner and ruining people's pity, why there's a lot of hate for Jean. I actually really like Jean. I guess I just feel a lot of sympathy for her because we still don't know what, you know, Varka's true mission is, why he's off in the north, and just so much work was kind of dumped on her. So, I don't know. Kazuo has to be elite fighter because he blocked the, it's called Muso no Hitachi. Again, I'm terrible with names. I'm sure I'm butchering all of the pronunciations too. Knight of Favonius. I do feel like the Kamisato siblings are also elite fighters, no? Like, even if they're not getting that same necessarily practical experience that you would see with some of these other people, they do both practice enough sword arts. I actually think, doesn't Ayaka beat Ayato in like a sparring match or something like that in lore? I don't know. We'll put them both here. Kaveh is a scholar. He does win that little contest they had in Sumeru for that one event. I would still put him in adventure tier. Kind of odd to put him there, I think, when Alhaitham's up here, but I don't know. That's probably just bias coming in, but I do personally feel like Alhaitham seemed like he was stronger. He ended up in a higher position of power and all that. He was more directly involved during the events of the Sumeru Archon quest, so I don't feel too bad about that. Pitching is pretty strong. I was talking about this earlier. I don't know if you'd qualify her as a yokai. I feel like she's not quite just a normal person with a vision. I know that, like, Diona isn't necessarily fully human per se either. Neither is, I would say, technically Baiju with the relationship with the snake, but that's kind of where I would put this tier. Again, someone I don't know, but also someone who just probably experiences potential for combat more often than a regular human, but not often enough to be an adventurer and obviously not enough to be stronger. Klee has the destructive power of, you know, literal bombs, so she's got to be pretty high up. Sara is basically the Shogun's equivalent of Goro from the opposite side during the Archon quest. She's pretty strong. Shinobu, I, by my own bias, kind of want to put her an elite fighter. She's very knowledgeable, right? She has so many different talents, cooking, she's a lawyer, she basically babysits the Ito gang, but I just don't know if she's really shown any, like, raw feats of power that made me put Ito an elite fighter. But she is much smarter. I'm still going to put her in adventure tier. That's about where I'd imagine she'd be. Layla's a scholar, but I honestly feel like she's average level fighter. The like, intellectuals of the Genshin universe, I feel like, are so hard to pin down because some of them fight a lot and some of them don't fight at all. Like, you could even make an argument for her just being a normal person with a vision, but just because she's a scholar, I almost feel like, similar to Kaveh, I have to put her higher than that tier. Lisa, we actually know, is really strong. There was some deal with her having like half her lifespan, but she is really powerful. She's just lazy, which I can absolutely relate to. The siblings as well, I'm just gonna put up there with Fremine. I just can't imagine that they are weak, but I really cannot imagine that they are like super heavy combat operatives. That's why they were, for example, infiltrating the Fortress of Meripede. Mika, I'm actually gonna put down in adventure tier. I don't want to do him dirty, but when I think of like elite fighter relating to the Knights of Favonius, I do think of the higher ranking members. I don't think just any member of the Knights of Favonius counts. Mona is, I mean, with the astrology and the predictions, she could be pretty strong. But at the same time, I feel like we never see her fight. She does rescue us from Scaramouche way back when, right? I'm going to put her in adventure tier. Nahid is obviously Archon level. I'm just going to put all the Archons in here. I know there's a big discrepancy in, like, not only just straight up power, but also their current versus peak levels. And I know there's a lot of arguments behind that. I do personally feel like of the Archons, Prime Zhongli was probably the strongest, but I know there's also a big argument for whether or not Neuvillette at his full power is stronger than Prime Zhongli, which I honestly don't know how you would even go about, you know, figuring out. Navia, I'm going to put in adventure tier. I don't think she's an elite fighter, but she does head an organization that deals with a lot of crime. She is very actively involved in that. I feel like I can put her there safely. Nilo is a performer, and I don't think she gets involved in fighting, even with the opera troupe. Ningguang's another weird one. I feel like if I put Beidou in elite fighter, I also have to put Ningguang in there because of just the feat, not just dropping the Jade Chamber on Osial, but also just having all like the amount, like the Geo Sigil she put out, right, and fired him out there. It seemed like she was capable of pretty wide scale attacks. Let me zoom this out just a little bit. Cropped it a little bit so it cut out ads, but Noelle I'm gonna put in adventure tier as well. She is, I believe, above average in like physical strength because of all the exercise she does. But you know, as much as people say that they do her dirty with letting other people into the Knights, I do feel like there's a very distinct reason why Jean isn't allowing it. And it's not that she just doesn't have the authority to do it. I just think that that's kind of where it is. Chi-Chi is another weird one, where I actually think because of the Adepto power she has, she's also an elite fighter. A is obviously an Archon. Razor I'm going to put in adventure tier. Rosari is an elite fighter. Which is odd to say. But of all the people that we see, like, we see her a lot more often, I think, in, like, espionage, right? Trailing Albedo. But I don't think she'd be able to do the things that she does in Mondstadt if she wasn't pretty strong. Kokomi is a war tactician. I feel like she goes in our most inflated tier. Sayu's a ninja. But she seems like she specializes more in stealth, like when she stole the documents for us. Shenhe's obviously really powerful. Hazel, I'm going to put in adventure tier. Adventure tier for me is also just kind of turning out to be people that I think we either don't see fight a lot because of their profession or lifestyle, or people that I feel like maybe haven't reached their peak potential, you know? Like when Sayu's older, she might be extremely powerful. Same thing with Noelle once she's a full-fledged Knight of Favonius and reaches that potential. Sucrose, I feel like I have to put in adventure tier as well just because I put Albedo in elite fighter. Tartaglia is obviously up here. He gets clowned on a lot. I don't like Tartaglia very much, but I do get why people like him. And I do feel like maybe he'll get his moment to shine in the upcoming quests. He's grown on me over time, but I definitely did dislike the whole, hey, by the way, I tried to kill everyone in Liyue, but you saved him, so we're buds, right? Toma, I'm actually going to put an average level fighter. I just feel like he's a housekeeper, but he's probably not. Like, I'd say he's probably generally stronger than this category. The head of the Forest Rangers, pretty high strength. Venti is an Archon. I honestly almost thought about putting Wander / Scaramouche in the Archon level tier. But at the same time, I don't feel like I can do that and feel good about it. Because I also don't like Wander very much. I think his kid is one of the coolest in the game by far, but just not my style of character. We'll just put him in Elite Fighter. Again, I'm not ordering these at all. He's probably at the very top of this tier, or maybe even bottom Archon level tier, because Archon level is a very broad statement. Briosly is... I mean, he had that one scene in the fortress, right? Where he stopped the entire pillar of water, so... You would imagine, too, he wouldn't have been able to work his way to the very top and become the warden of the fortress if he wasn't able to hold his own. Zhongling is a chef. I don't think she runs into combat at all, which is funny because she's often seen in conjunction with, like, Chongyun and Xingqiu, right? But I also feel like these two probably get into fights a lot more often, if only just because of Xingqiu's disposition. And I believe he does study swordsmanship. Zhao's an Adeptus. Jinyan's another character like Toma, where I feel like her line of work and her lifestyle doesn't really have her fighting at all, but for some reason I just imagine her to be stronger than just a normal person with a vision. Miko's definitely a high-tier fighter. I mean, we had this with Miko, we had this with Neuvillette, where people from the start were thinking, oh, this is the real Archon, which hilariously enough, I mean, in some technicality, they had possession of the Gnosis. But in the case of Neuvillette, I think he actually was that strong as the Dragon Sovereign. Miko, I think, is just very crafty. I really like Miko, she's my favorite character. But I just don't think that in terms of, like, actual combat strength, I could put her in Archon level. When it comes to the familiars, though, like, honestly, as funny as that is, if I had Ajdaha or Dvalin in here, I would put them in Archon level. But... to be fair, A also killed her dragon. That wasn't Yai to begin with. Yanfei's a lawyer. And I honestly could see her throwing hands. She's very, like, matter-of-fact and blunt about everything regarding law. I could see, like, you know, some defendant that she's prosecuting getting really mad and picking a fight. And as far as I understand, too, since she's somewhat related to, like, the characters that deal a lot with Madame Ping, like Yao Yao, I also feel like I can't just put in normal person with a vision, even if we don't ever see them fight. Yelan's an elite level fighter. He absolutely just smacks down Fatui all the time, captures them, interrogates them. She's pretty strong. I really don't know much about Yao Yao, but by that same reasoning I used, I'm just gonna put them both in average tier, because they are people that talk to, Granny Ping, and the people that we do believe are, like, super closely tied to the Adeptus as far as the people in Liyue Harbor go. Yoimiya's in normal person with the vision. Yunjin, I believe, is also normal person with the vision, and Zhongli is Archon level. In terms of the characters I don't have here that we know are coming up, I would put Cloran in Elite Fighter for sure. I mean, we'd put the top 3 Harbingers by definition in this tier. I have no idea how strong I think Arlecchino is. I thought that was pretty funny too, because when a Winter Knights Lazo came out, the slots that were open, right, were, that we didn't know for sure, were 2, 4, 7, and 10. Between Sandrone, Arlecchino, Capitano, and Dottore. And at the time, people didn't really have the theory that seems to be correct, in that Piero is now the director of the Fatui. I honestly always figured that was probably just a translation thing, whichever way they went with it. Because, in my personal opinion, I never got the opinion from their wording that they meant, oh, he's not literally ranked number 1. But then when we found all that stuff out, with Dottore being number 2, Arlecchino being number 4, and all the statements about Capitano being what they are, I think at this point it's all but confirmed that Capitano's 1, right? Piero's the director. We know Sandrone now is the 7th. Dottore was confirmed as 2. Arlecchino was confirmed at 4. And I just genuinely didn't think that they were going to leave the 10th position vacant. Not counting, you know, our poor 8th Harbinger that may have kind of had it coming. Or how the whole retcon that happened in Sumeru made the 6th seat empty. I honestly do wonder, and this is a theory I've had for a little bit now, if maybe similar to how we became an honorary Knight of Favonius, we might become an honorary Harbinger. I know that's a real shot in the dark, but at some point, Genshin seems to have come with the idea that, unlike Honkai Impact 3rd, and maybe even potentially Star Rail in technicality, characters do not have to be. Well, characters need to be protagonists in Genshin, right? We literally have the Hersher of the Void in Honkai Impact 3rd. So, if they have to be people that are allied with us, at least even temporarily, that probably means at some point they're going to make the Tsaritsa playable. We need to be allied with them at some point. I think that would be a really cool twist. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. As far as other characters we know that are coming up in Genshin, Hiyori, I actually can't get a read on. A lot of people have predicted, I think, that she has like a mafia background. I don't think she's just a normal person with a vision. Who else is there? I mean, Skirk is probably an elite fighter, if not potentially even Archon level. And I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone or, you know, who else is coming up, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Anyways, guys, that's my tier list for what I currently believe the Genshin characters to be in terms of general strength. I am probably extremely wrong. I'll be honest. This was just for fun. Like I was saying earlier, I was super wrong on the Harbinger ranks. My personal thought was, because I didn't like Dottore, I thought Capitano was second, Dottore was fourth, when we didn't know again that Piero was the director, not first. When people still thought he was first, I should say. And then I thought Arlecchino was 7th, and Sandrone would be 10th. And then Arlecchino ended up being higher ranked than I thought, Capitano's higher ranked than I thought, Dottore's higher ranked than I thought, and Sandrone's higher ranked than I thought. It's just really interesting to see, because there's so many fan theories, too, that I find really cool, and then I buy into, and then we're all wrong. Like, what's another good example? I mean, even just, like, leaks on designs, too. I still remember the original design for Heizo looked nothing like this. And there's a few other options like that. I think the original Kuki Shinobu design also looked more like Sayu than it did the current version in terms of when people leaked it. But anyways, guys, I had fun with this. Hopefully anyone who watched this enjoyed it. I'll catch you next time. Bye.